to Fixing My Faith, and this is a continuation of our previous video, My Awakening. And through my awakening, I've been doing a lot of research. And in the research, I've been researching the JW stuff. So when I was researching the old magazines of Russell, the old Watchtowers, 1906, I would put certain keywords in and go. It would the PDF searcher would go through 200 pages and find out how many times they use the word Jehovah, how many times they use the word Satan, things like that. And recently, we did the same thing on a February 2023 edition. We did a Watchtower review, and we found that when we plugged in Jehovah, that came up over 100 times, and not in the scriptures, in their own words. So you can use a good representative, a famous person, and you can do what they call name dropping. And one of our subscribers mentioned that in the video, that, oh, that's just name dropping. And it never dawned on me. So name dropping is a thing. So here's the dictionary version. The practice is, it's the practice of casually mentioning the names of famous people one knows or claims to know in order to impress others. So normally that's what it's about. The name dropping technique. Name dropping interference is a corrective tool used to let students know when they are off task. Teachers aren't directly pointing out their behavior, but rather saying the student's name to get their attention and have them answer a question or to show the class an example. So sometimes teachers will use name dropping in that sense. So now let's go down a little further. Is name dropping good? That's my question. Name dropping is when you mention you know someone famous or well-known, like Jehovah, in a conversation. As a rule, name dropping has a negative connotation in that whether or not you know said person, you mention the connotation, what? To impress others. So here it is, we're at the Kingdom Hall, and well, you know, Jehovah doesn't like that. Or, hey, you know, I'm going to go see that movie Avatar. You know, I'd really like to go see it. Or you come back from the movie Avatar and they say, well, you know, Jehovah doesn't like that. That's happened to me, by the way. I went and seen the movie Avatar back when it came out. And I was impressed so much, I went to the Maximum Theater, the Max Theater, you know, 3D, whatever. And I wanted to see it. And I saw it like 3 times. And then I bought the CD. And then I got chastised online on a JW forum, and they cut me off the forum over that movie. So, yes, as a Jehovah's Witness, we are all familiar with name dropping. And the Watchtower teaches everyone to name drop. That's what they do. Now, how do you deal with name droppers? So, we're dealing with name droppers online. So when I'm doing my research online and I'm researching things, so I was researching Jesus versus Horus, and we get partway through the research, and you know, there's lots of people out there, mythbusters and all kinds of. I'm not going to name any names, but we're going to actually look at a couple of videos, and we're going to see how name dropping slants the video. And in my mind, when I see name droppers dropping Satan, typically they compare everything to Satan. And I know nothing about the Egyptian culture. I actually did some research through more of a reputable source. I was doing some reading, and the Egyptian culture is amazing. In fact, it's the longest lasting culture on Earth, 3,000 years. So they had to have some really unique ways of ruling. And when I studied the culture, they have a really unique form of worship where even the emperor believes, to the point that, you know, could you imagine if our prime ministers believed in the Bible to the point that perhaps some of us believe into the Bible? Might change things, but these emperors really believed. And the beliefs were good. And as I was doing some of my research, I found out they had a Jesus figurehead in their culture, perhaps. But theirs is it looks like it's written on the stones to me. So then I start doing the research, and I want to go to the other side. Okay, is this a myth, or what is this all about? And so I look at the credibility of the people presenting the information. And then I look at the name dropping, and I try to see what they're trying to do. So name dropping, how do you deal with it? Change the subject. Simple as that. If you find that you're on a channel, I don't stay on channels where I find that they're throwing out Satan a lot. None of us have met Satan. I've never seen Satan, but apparently a lot of people seen Jesus. Apparently a lot of people seen Moses. So here's some good people to perhaps think about what they did. They talked about love. They didn't talk about Satan. So when I look at articles, I'm looking online, and I'm looking for creators of these videos that are representing God in a way that God is love. God is not partial. So when we look at all the nations on earth, I'm looking to see, is there bits and pieces of God in all of these nations all over the earth? Because I know that God's signature is on each of us. We are all made in God's image. So I'm trying to look for the commonality of God in all the cultures on earth, rather than the narcissist type. I came out of a narcissist relationship with the Jehovah's Witness religion. That's what that was. And it's a very narcissist leadership, the Jehovah's Witness religion, among many other Christian religions. I find the Christian religion as a whole is very narcissistic. They believe they're it, and everything else is Satan. I just think that's JW'ing it. I got out of this JW box for 10 years, and I'm not jumping back in. I'm going to look at everything. So I do look at name dropping, and that's what I'm looking at with Russell. I look at that with the Jehovah's Witnesses. And now I'm looking at that with everyone online, because there's a lot of people online that are JWing it, and they're not even JWs. So here it is. Let's look at the first guy here. Here we go. This guy I look at, he's just a guy. He's Milwaukee. He's got 9,000 subscribers. So he's got quite the following. And this guy, I watched his whole video. I always give people the credit. I watch their whole video because I want to see everything. So we're just going to watch a minute here.
And Mithra of Persia. There are dozens of world saviors who died and resurrected and actually carry on the same of the many titles that Jesus still has, which is being the light of the world, Alpha and Omega, and quite a few others. But how is this possible? You must remember that Satan isn't some ordinary spirit that walks on the earth tormenting people. No. He gets in the mind of God's people. He knows our strength and weaknesses. He is very crafty and intelligent. You see, he knew Jesus, the Son of the living God, will come to this earth. But to use Jesus' testimony before he came to earth is quite intriguing, but yet possible. Now let's say if none of this even exists, such as Krishna, Mithra, Horus, Attis, and the many others, then we can just move on. Jesus is Lord and is the only Lord. But let's say if this is true, guess what? Jesus is Lord and will always be. I will talk a little bit more about this after the video I'm getting ready to show you. In this video, a man by the name of Tony Browder. Tony is a historian and culture memory specialist. In this interview, he shares his knowledge about religion as a form of control or oppression, including Jesus, Mary, and God the Father, and also reveals Christianity is a copy of Kemetic Egyptian origins. There are many other historians and scholars that has the same perspective that this guy has. So just keep in mind that Satan counterfeited it in advance because he knew that Jesus will come to earth. And not many people know this. That's why I decided to make a video about it. Listen to him and see how this deception can corrupt the minds of those who...
Okay, so he goes on to talk about Satan quite a bit. And you notice he puts this guy that put a lot of research, went to Egypt. And as he's talking, he's name dropping Satan, Satan, Satan with this guy's picture in the background. So he really wants the audience, you and I, to see this guy as Satan. So then he goes on and lets his whole video run out. And I actually watched this African guy, and this African guy made a lot of sense to me. So, but I can see how a lot of the really hardcore JW thinking Christians, and there's a lot out there. It's not just in the JW religion. It could be in the Jewish religion. It could be all over the earth. It is all over the earth. We have the extremists, and they're hardcore about protecting their own faiths, their own beliefs. And as you've seen all the different beliefs, the young man that did this video, I thought he did a fabulous job. He kind of did some research, showed all the different faiths all over the earth, gets down to Jesus, Christians. Well, it's the one that's solid, but everything else is Satan. That's basically the message I got. So I thought I was watching a Watchtower video. Give me your comments. Let me know what you think. So I went to the other extreme, and this video is done by Is the New Testament Based on Myths, Pagan Christ Timeline. Timeline's a pretty big company. These guys have a lot of videos out, and they did a take on this minister, this religious guy, kind of came out of religion, kind of like us. I was disgruntled with a few things, and then stood back and started looking at it. And so they did a story here. I'd recommend watching this one. I thought it was done openly. They weren't trying to throw anything at us. They were just more or less trying to present what's out there. And I don't speak or understand Egyptian hieroglyphs, so I have no opinion except that I will watch this video a lot further than I'll watch the previous one, because the previous one to me was done by the Watchtower, even though it wasn't. This video was done like a history channel or a documentary. And that's what I'm curious about, to see what the world's doing. And is there a little bit of God in everybody? Can we go to all the cultures in the world and see God is in everyone? And maybe evil is within each of us, because it is. Paul talked about that. He said we have a battle within the flesh. He says we have one side of us that wants to do all these good things, like the fruits of the Spirit, but we have this other side of us that wants to do bad things. And I wrote a video on that a while ago. And even in the indigenous culture, they call it the two wolves within. We have a dark wolf and a white wolf, and they're always fighting, the two wolves within. And then one day they make peace, and they work together. So it's an interesting story. But that's what we have to do inside of us. Paul talked about this. We have to battle within, and we have to make peace. And what is going to win? Well, God is love. If we want to ignite the God power within us, love has to win. And if we watch Watchtower videos all about Satan, just put Satan, Satan, Satan. And who of us have seen Satan on earth? Not that I'm saying that Satan isn't a real entity. I'm not saying that. But we've seen Jesus. Jesus is love. So perhaps Jesus, perhaps God, because God loves humanity so much, he had Jesus figures all the way through. We don't know. This could be one example. Wouldn't surprise me. And then Jesus comes again through the Hebrews to save the Hebrews. And now we have Christianity, and we have most of the world is it's the biggest religion on earth, Christianity, the belief in Jesus. So we're going to continue on. I was trying to run the timeline video, and it's copyrighted, so I'm going to put the link in my description below, and I'll talk about it a little later on here. But this might seem clipped in, and it is. So what I was going to show you is this thing on Horus and Jesus. If you don't know who Horus is an Egyptian kind of a Jesus. So do I believe in all of this? Well, I believe in fact, if there's archaeological evidence for Horus. And if you watch this other video, there's a guy that wrote a book. There's always a guy writing a book on this stuff. And he claims that they can now decipher the 3 languages because they found the stone. So now, clearer than ever, they can figure out these hieroglyphics. And apparently in a lot of these nations, there was Jesus-like figures. Even in some of the other nations, I don't think I'm going to get into it all. But the point that I want to make in this video is it's not unreasonable to think that the God of the universe, who has his signature, YHWH, into all of our DNAs, the signature from the Hebrew language that says God is within us, everyone, it would seem reasonable that because God loves all people, that God would send a Jesus type person, prophet, something, to every nation on earth through history. So here we have these Egyptians that lived 3,000 years, and they were a real smooth running civilization, and they honored their God. And here they had this Jesus figure. So what is it? I feel if we're open enough, let's do the research. Let's look at it. Let's at least look at it. And we all know that our Jesus is real. We're not walking away from that one. And we know that God loves the Hebrews, the Jews, and us today. So why wouldn't we have a Jesus to save us? It's starting to make sense, really, to me. Now, here's what it says. People ask, how are Jesus and Horus similar? It is said that Horus, like Jesus, or Jesus, like Horus, was born of a virgin, had 12 disciples, walked on water, delivered a sermon on the mount, performed miracles, was executed beside two thieves, rose from the dead, and ascended into heaven. The story in Egypt sounds very similar to our story. Who is Horus in the Bible? Horus, or Hero, Har, ancient Egyptian, is one of the most significant ancient Egyptian deities who served many functions, most notably a god of kingship in the sky. Now, we're going to whip through this rather rapidly because if you're interested, you could watch the movie and get way more out of it. How is ancient Egyptian religion similar to Christianity? Now, I did some research on this a while ago because Jesus went to Egypt right after he was born. So Christianity and ancient Egypt religious beliefs are similar in many ways. Both Christians and ancient Egyptians believe that children are a blessing from God, and that death is a transitional stage leading from this world to the next, and that there is an afterlife that lasts forever. Sounds pretty much like our beliefs. Was Jesus born in Egypt? Both the Gospels, which describe the nativity of Jesus, agree that he was born in Bethlehem, then later moved with his family to live in Nazareth. Now, the Gospel of Matthew describes how Joseph and Mary and Jesus went to Egypt to escape from Herod the Great's slaughter of the baby boys in Bethlehem. So if you remember the story, Herod went out and had all the children slaughtered 2 years and younger. So Joseph and Mary were led by an angel to flee to Egypt. And they had all that money from the Magi, remember. So they had the funds to go to Egypt and buy a house and do whatever they needed to do for a few years until things calmed down. Now, we're not going to read any further on this, but the more I did research on this, I realized that there was a lot of controversy on this subject. The Christians especially were really upset that there could be a Jesus in another land, and they weren't the only ones, the chosen ones on earth. So all the Christians are up in arms, is what I see. So all the Christians, and I shouldn't say all of them, but a lot of them are JW'ing what's out there. And I don't know about you, but I was in the JW religion a little bit too long to be sucked in to saying everything is from Satan, when the Bible clearly says that God loves all mankind, and we are all made in God's image. So that's all I have to say for this part, and we'll carry on to the next transition clip. Thank you. I found it was a good evening watch. It's a 47-minute video, and it was a nice story. What it did for me is it opened my mind up to realize that, maybe God is a way bigger than just Christianity. Christianity is a third of the earth. And maybe the Romans really needed Jesus. God's seen all of this happening, and the Romans were a power, control hungry people, and they needed a Jesus to help them. And they killed Jesus, blamed it on the Jews, or did the Jews part of it? Who knows? The Jews had kind of a part in it because they turned the God's house into a house of money, to the point that Jesus went in and turned over the tables of money. So we're going to talk more about Jesus, the Jesus that you and I know as ex-Jehovah's Witnesses. But I thought this was a little interesting, out of the box, like our last video about the God's signature on our DNA. I thought that was interesting. I don't know how that sat with you, but it kind of is helping me to open up a bit and realize that God is much bigger than what we think. God is everywhere. God is perhaps working within you and I right now. And perhaps we are at this time of awakening where we're waking up. And when we go online and we see videos that are like Watchtower videos, where they drop Satan a lot, I don't know about you, but to me, that's repelling. I've dealt with that for 30 years. And now as I'm dissecting it, right from the founders of Russell, I see how Russell even used the same tactics. And we do too. You and I use the same tactics. We all do. So we are guilty of it. I probably do it on this show. I name drop love a lot. I figure if I name drop that enough, it should sink into everyone's minds, because it's a good energy. And I've been experiencing more and more of it as I've been focusing on it. So obviously I want to share that. So folks, until next time, keep living your life with love. Bye for now.